So once we have line segments, we basically have lines that have a starting point, an endpoint, and an endpoint. And when I have an endpoint and an endpoint, I have a set distance. And when I have a set distance, there has to exist a point that's right in the middle. So that's what we're going to be finding here are these midpoints. So some examples, it's not so bad. Let's say that I had this line segment right here. So this point is, get out, dang it. There we go. This line segment right here has a point at 3, 0, and 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In an example like this, I don't think you need to even go to any formula, do anything special, right? You basically just look what's right in the middle, right? And we should be able to calculate that 2, 3, that's my midpoint. Now, not all examples are going to be this simplistic, right? But I want to use this one that we know the solution to as kind of a jumping off point. So if I was just to give you the points 1, 6, and 3, 0, we should be able to calculate the midpoint between those two, and it should be 2, 3, which we already figured out. So here's the formula you may see. You may see this, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2 divided by 2. That will give you the coordinates of your midpoint. Now, it looks more complex than it actually is on this one. Take a look at this problem. All they're basically saying is, if I need to figure out where the x coordinate of my midpoint is, I just need to look at the two midpoints, the two x values, and just find out what's halfway in between them. So to figure out what's halfway in between them is you add them up and divide by 2. So what they're basically doing is, if we look back at that picture, we basically said, well, what's between, the midpoint has to be, as far as the x's are concerned, this 1 right here and this 3, it has to be halfway between 1 and 3. The mathematical way, like the algebraic way of doing that, is I say, okay, I take my two x values. x1 stands for my first x value. x2 just stands for my second x value. The 2 doesn't mean you multiply by 2, this x2 down here. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means my first x value, my second x value. Otherwise, we'd have x and x in there. So this is just a notation. That's just subscript. So what happens if I take my first x value, my second x value, 1 and 3, and I add them together and divide by 2? Well, that's going to get me my first midpoint coordinate of 2. Well, I'm going to do the exact same thing for the height of my midpoint. I need to figure out, I have a height of 6 and a height of 0. So what's in between a height of 6 and a height of 0? Let's take a look. If I go back to my pad here, I take my first y value, that is 6, and my second y value, which is 0. They tell me to do 6 plus 0 divided by 2. 6 plus 0 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. So this formula will bring us to the midpoint right away. Now, if you're thinking that this way takes way more time, you're not wrong for this example. But if the points I was to give you were erase. You know, that was a pretty simplistic example. What if the points I was to give you were 9, 217, and 5.5, negative 13.7? Not only would I have to make a graph that's 217 tall, because that's my top y coordinate, I would also have to worry about this whole decimal thing of negative 3.7. So with the algebraic way of doing it, I'm not going to call it mine, I just take my two x values, 9 plus 5.5, and I divide it by 2. That's going to get me my x coordinate, right? And I'm going to do the exact same thing here with my y values, I do 217 plus a negative 13.7, add them together, and I divide by 2. And that's going to give me the y coordinate of my, my midpoint. So solving it like that is actually pretty slick. The other thing that we can have happen, kind of back myself in a corner, I didn't actually want to do all that hard computation in front of you guys because there's no way it would work out smoothly. The other thing we could throw your way is something like this. Let's take a look at this snipping tool. Now, in this example, we were given the two endpoints, here and here, right? And we were charged with finding the midpoint. So that's one way we could go about it. Could make it tricky, do something like this. What if I was to do something like this? Here's the endpoint of my line, and let's say, there's the endpoint of my line. What if I said that my midpoint was right, I don't know, here? The question is where is my midpoint? It should be somewhere all the way over there off the screen, right? Off my graph. So we can figure out the other endpoint given the coordinates of one of my endpoints and the midpoint. So here is the first one. It's 3, 3. That's one endpoint. The line is going to go through here, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 9, 5. So the question is, what's my other endpoint? So 3, 3 is one of my endpoints. And my, sorry, that's my endpoint. And my midpoint is 9, 5. Okay. So this is kind of whichever way, oh darn, that M is ugly. Whichever way works better for you when you're thinking about this. I'll give you two different ways of thinking about it. Probably the first thing that I would figure out is, if this is the midpoint, this is my halfway point, right? So I need to go up. If I go up and over, so I'm going up 2, and I'm going right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So I'm going up 2, right 6. Well, my next point, since it's the midpoint, must also be up 2, right 6. So the only question is, what's up 2, right 6 from that point? Well, the up 2 is a measure of y, right? And the up 6 is a measure of your x. When I'm talking about up, I'm talking about rise. It's a y value. When I'm talking about plus 6 going right 6, that's that direction. So I can figure out that this is 7, 15. So 15, 7. Now we should always be able, so this is my other endpoint, right? Should always be able to check my work, right? If the problem was I was given these two endpoints, would I get the same midpoint? Well, checking that seems to be quite a trivial matter. All we have to do is we add up our two x values, our y values. 3 and 7, that's 10, and divided by 2, yeah, 5 is right in the middle of that. Same thing here. If I add up my two x values, 3 and 15, add them together, divided by 2, I do get my first coordinate of 9. So that works. The other thing that could make sense for it is if I was given something like, let's say this. So this is 2, 1. And let's say that my midpoint was over here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, down 1, 2, 3. So this is 8, -3. So my question is, where is my other endpoint? There's an algebraic way to solve this. So I'm just going to write down what I have over here. My endpoint is 2, 1. My midpoint is 8, negative 3. And my other endpoint, don't know, comma, don't know. And it may be helpful to think about this as my endpoint is an x value I don't know and a y value I don't know. So let's look at the how we would solve that algebraically. I know that to calculate my midpoint, which the answer will be 8, negative 3. How do I get this 8 value? I do my first x value and my second x value, so 2 plus x divided by 2. And what do I get? I get 8. How do I get this y value? Negative 3. Well, to get the midpoint value of negative 3, I would have taken my first y value and my second y value, the second one I don't know, 1 plus x, and I would divide it by 2 to find the average, the middle of it, and I would have got a solution of negative 3. Right? So that's supposed to be a y. Now it looks like a y. So now I have the problem set up. I just need to solve this thing algebraically, right? So let's take a look. This is being divided by 2, so I'm going to multiply the entire side by 2. So that cancels out and that cancels out. I get 2 plus x is equal to 16. I subtract 2 from each side, and I get x is equal to 14. So my endpoint is going to be 14, comma. And if I look back here, to solve this equation, same thing. This entire left side with the variable right there is being divided by 2. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. Those cancel out. I get 1 plus y is equal to negative 6. Subtract 1 from both sides, and I get y is negative 7. So the y value for my other endpoint must be negative 7. Now if I look back at my, my diagram, this answer seems to make sense to me. Because if I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if I go 6 this way, I get to my midpoint. So if I go 6 further, I should get to my endpoint. 6 plus 8, 14. So my x value works out with in this problem. I also need to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, minus 4. So I need to go minus 4 more from negative 3. So start at negative 3, go down 4 more. Guess what? You're at negative 7. Go 8, go right 6. You're going to be at 14. So there's an algebraic way, and there's kind of a thinking about it graphically kind of way. So whichever way works for you, feel free to use.